Good morning. How are you folks? Enjoying Ignite? Yeah? Cool. Hi. So before I start, my name is Aditya. I'm a product manager in Azure SQL. I'm joined by my colleague Anitha and a great customer called Heckscher. Before I dive in, I just want to learn how many of you folks use any kind of SQL? Well, yeah, sure. All the team. OK, cool. Awesome. OK, how many of you use Azure SQL? OK, great. Now, how many of you use Azure SQL Managed Instance? Great. So, cool. So, if I am saying anything wrong, please correct me, OK? Cool. Great. So, before I dive, you might have heard a lot in this Ignite. It's all about one single word, AI, right? All this AI is garbage in, garbage out. That's what our CVP Arun says, if there is no data. There are 9 million users who are depending upon SQL as the data source. Now, this SQL is there in ground, in cloud, and in Fabric. Why do we want this SQL everywhere? We want to give all of you folks a consistent experience wherever you go. The word that I kind of really like is familiar. You really need a familiar language that you need to interact wherever you go, be it on-prem, be it going to Azure SQL, or be it in Fabric. Wherever you go, the consistent language. So we want to give you one consistent SQL. That's what we are trying to do here. And in this foray of all these editions, we have Azure SQL. This is the edition which is in Azure. Now, in Azure SQL, you have multiple varieties. One is IaaS, which is SQL Server running on Azure virtual machines. That means you are the boss. You kind of can kind of do all the DBA work, configure stuff, all of it. Then there is Azure Managed Instance, for which this session is kind of pretty interesting. In Azure Managed Instance, this is purposefully built for migration scenarios. You want all the things that you would want that is there in on-prem, but you want Microsoft to manage it. That is Azure Managed Instance. And finally, there is this Azure SQL database. Now, you want to modernize your applications where you might not get all the things that you have in the on-prem, like cross-database transactions, SQL Server agent jobs. All of that you might not get, but there is other power that you could get with Azure SQL DB. That is there as the third one. Now, in particular, today, we will look at Azure SQL Managed Instance. As I said, this is a service that we purposefully built to make your SQL Server databases that you have on-prem modernized. What do we mean by that? In on-prem, when you are running your SQL, you are worried about your patching, you are worried about your high availability, you are worried about your performance. Here, we take that worry. All that worries are us. We take those worries and we give you a platform where you have all your applications just transport to Azure and make those workloads modernize. So we built this Azure SQL Managed Instance to support the most mission-critical performance sensitive workloads. We really want to make sure the productivity of the DBAs increase. The DBAs today should not be really thinking about, oh, when is my last transactional log backup? Is it successful? Did it got archived? Or when is the last index maintenance I have run? When all of those things, the DBA should not be really worried about. DBA should be worried about how can I give a better performance to my application. That's what they really need to worry about. So Azure SQL Managed Instance is there to increase the DBA productivity. And I'm not sure how many of you follow Microsoft blogs. Or EVP Charlie Bell kind of recently posted about SFI. Microsoft is committed to make all our applications that we are developing under Microsoft secure first. And so does databases too. We want to keep your data extremely secure and highly, highly available. So that is a promise that we can't really go back. This is our table stakes, being secure, being highly available. And Now that we are saying it's all like your on-prem instances, which essentially means we also want to honor your licenses that you got in your on-prem if you are migrating. So we honor that through Azure Hybrid benefit. So you got some licenses, you can get those licenses back onto on-prem, use those licenses as Azure Hybrid benefit. Now, one thing I said in my prior slide that it is one consistent SQL. What does that mean? And in other words is, if we develop something for one SKU, it is there for all the editions. The things that we developed for AI, it is there on-prem in SQL Server 2025 GA release. Oh, by the way, how many of you are excited for SQL Server 2025 release? Say everyone, say yes. Yeah, oh, cool, thanks. So SQL Server 2025 release, the tagline for that is it's an AI-ready database. The thing that we developed for that is there for all the editions that you have, even for the managed instance. So we call the SQL Server Managed Instance a AI-ready database. Now, who wants more? Everyone, right? So that's why we introduce the NextGen general purpose database. We are marking it as generally available today. What does that mean? So we have learned with from the experiences of all the customers. We work with a lot of customers. You would hear from one of the customers today where they want more than what they are really getting from the managed instance that we have today. We continuously learn that feedback, and we have developed, and today it is the NextGen general purpose database in managed instance. To just give you a little background, managed instance have two flavors in it also. One is general purpose, and one is business critical. In general purpose, the data is your remote storage, whereas in business critical, it is for your very low latency databases, which is local to your instance, local to your compute. Now, this edition is a next up for the general purpose database, remote storage solution that we have, which is general purpose. What are the features that we have here? Folks, I have to say I was really excited when we started testing this general purpose database. One of the main things that I see is performance goes next level with general purpose, next level GP. Not just performance. The amount of data you store is right now 32 terabytes. And guess what? The number of databases that you can have is 500 databases. That's 5 times, folks. 100 databases to 500. Please clap, sir. 100 databases to 500 databases. And the other thing that everyone likes is flexibility, right? So last year I was at PaaS Summit. I was talking to one of the MVPs, and I asked, like, what is the one thing that you want? They are like, dude, we want less number of cores, but we want more amount of memory. Or we want the flexibility to dial the IOPS, right? We heard that feedback, and that is there with Next General GP now. Okay, so let's look into all of that in detail. So how about a demo, right? What I did here is there is this SQL demo GP on the left side. In the middle is the NextGen GP. And on the right, extreme right, is the business critical, okay? The only thing that you would see in the middle is NextGen general purpose is enabled. They are configured with same number of cores. They are configured with same amount of, almost similar amount of, storage, which is 8 vCores. Now, if I run a TPC, okay, wait. Why? Okay, cool. There is no fun without a glitch. Okay, cool. So what I'm doing is I'm running a TPCC benchmark. I told you folks, right? I'm really, really excited about the performance. Here you see The general purpose is giving you around 15,000 transactions per minute, whereas NextGen GP is giving you 30,000 transactions, and the BC was giving you more than that. And here you can see that the log write latency is 2 milliseconds compared to 4 milliseconds in your general purpose. What does that mean? That means the amount of the log write latency that you get is half right now. From 4 milliseconds, it went to 2 milliseconds. The number of IOPS that you do is 73 to 250, IOPS per second, which means we increased it almost 3 to 4 times. Just by enabling NextGen GP, it goes almost 4 times of IOPS. The latency decreases half a time, and the transactions per minute actually doubled, which is 15,000 TPM to 30,000 TPM. That's what we call NextGen GP. Now that this is this costly, this is this good, the performance increased, is there more cost to it? No, folks, this is for free. The performance is for free, not the addition. So you are getting it for the same price. General purpose and NextGen GP are of the same price, okay? So, thank you. So everyone loves stuff. So now how to enable this, right? What is the portal user experience that we have? As I said, it is very, very simple UX. All you need to do is to kind of enable NextGen GP. That's what you need to do. For the folks who already have experience in managed instances, if you go to the portal, you're familiar with it. All you need to do is just say enable, okay? The next thing that you need to do is, the flexibility that I said. You can see there are vCores, there is storage, there is IOPS, there is memory. All of that is there. And vCores can go till 128. Prior, it's only 18, now it is 128. And now you can go till 32 TB of storage. So that's a huge bump with what we have in general purpose databases. Then, as I also mentioned, these new sliders that we got, this is of popular demand from the on-prem customers who really believed in SQL all through. They really want flexibility. That flexibility is there with memory sliders and the IOPS sliders, okay? Now, let's see how it compares in total, right? If you see, what I did is, there is this classic GP, the same way how we got the demo, I got this here. There is this classic GP, there is this NextGen GP, and the BC. The thing that you kind of need to look at here is the average I/O latency that I said was around 5 to 10 milliseconds prior. Now it is only 3 to 4 milliseconds. The maximum log rate is 192 Mbps. Guess what it is equivalent to? It is equivalent to almost the BC maximum log rate. Well, just for everyone to know, log rate is the rate at which you can essentially insert your data into the database. That's almost equivalent to BC. The storage scalability, if you see, it's way more than what BC gives you, which is 32 terabytes and 500 databases. So that is something like every on-prem customer that I'm talking to, they are saying, folks, we like it, but we want more scalability. That's what it is here. And compute scalability, right? As I said, prior general purpose is at around 128 vCores. The NextGen GP is at around 128 vCores, which is equivalent to the BC. Now, yes, this is what it is, folks. You are getting almost like BC, but at the rate of GP. That's what it is about. So I'm so super excited about this. And I'm really looking forward for all the managed instances folks who are ever using it to kind of use the NextGen GP. Okay? I might need to. I will be cautious right now. So this is one demo I think all the folks who really like SQL Server would really enjoy. So what I'm doing here is, this demo is about, I have a workload that is running, okay? I am running that workload with IOPS of 3000. And this is the amount of TPM I'm getting. That is around 7,740 TPM. Now, what I'm doing is I'm just increasing the IOPS to 12,800, and I'm just saying go apply. Now, in general, whenever whatever configuration of this sort will take your connections down. Here, you would see without taking the connections down, the TPM actually increased, which means no disruption to your connections, but still make your application super faster just by sliding your IOPS to a better level. That's the promise that we have. And when we did this demo, I was really, really excited, and I'm super sure that all of you folks would appreciate this, that just without any connection drops, we really got the better performance for the applications. Now, this is what all I am saying, right, from the product side. We have a real customer, Heckscher, who is there with us since the beginning of this journey of NextGen GP, since the private preview. It's my privilege to call Troy and Craig onto the stage, please. Craig, thank you so much for joining. Troy, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Craig, thanks for flying here. Tell me something about Heckscher.
So from what Heckscher is we're a leading organization that provides digital and application services for wealth management, banking, insurance services, things of that nature. So we have their clients, they can work with their clients to provide visibility for life insurance projections, annuity projections, long-term care, disability, those types of things. We have several technologies that, next slide, that we provide that do those things.
Okay.
So Foresight, Firelight are our premier technologies. It's two different applications. Within those applications, you get fully compliant services for for their clients and drive operational efficiency. At the end of the day, it's much better for much better platform for them to be able to provide services to their clients. As you can imagine, we have a lot of data and PII data, other classified or confidential information in our systems. So by moving to this _MI, we were able to better secure that, be more cost efficient, and those types of things. I want to turn it over to Troy so you guys can have that conversation and say how, how that went.
Troy, my favorite man. Tell me why you chose Azure and managed instances.
So when some of what we were running into, some of the problems we were running into on-prem, we were still running old legacy machines, actually physical hardware, not virtual machines. We were running physical hardware. And that hardware we thought we had projected to be big enough, to be the right size so that we could grow. We were sadly mistaken. We kept trying to add more disks. We kept running out of memory. We kept running out of CPU. And the hardware was also coming to the end of life. We had some other issues with just trying, as our application kept growing, we just couldn't maintain it anymore. We were having problems with patching, as you talked about earlier. Just we'd have to take down the system for 6 to 8 hours just to do patching and maintain our system. And then also because of the disk space issues that we had, we kept running out of the ability to do backups locally. So we had to store them off at the data center. Just restoring from there became a problem. So that was kind of some of the driving forces of why we were going, hey, we want to move to Azure and trying to get so that we had more ability to grow.
Now let's talk about why Azure SQL. I know you, in your journey, you have SQL Server. You are a very big SQL Server on-prem customers. What made you choose Azure SQL Managed Instance? So
with managed instance, we actually didn't start with going to managed instance. We tried some other solutions. Our goal when we were moving to going to Azure, we wanted to go full PaaS. We didn't want to do it as just a lift and shift. We wanted to go full PaaS, and we just didn't fully understand what managed instance really was giving us. And so we tried some other things and tried to go different directions. And we ended up going back and talking to our account team and talking to the SQL engineering team, and they made the suggestion, hey, why don't you try managed instance? Once we really started digging in and looking at it and realizing we could get the full functionality of SQL Server in a managed instance, we no longer had to deal with patching. We no longer had to worry about having agents, because we had agents on-prem, and we just didn't, we were worried how we were going to make that work with other solutions. And when we realized that we could have this with managed instance with very little changes in our code, we started the choice and went, this is our choice. This is the best option for us. So we went and fully embraced it. And especially with some of the backup options, we now can restore backups within minutes. Whereas it used to take us, in some cases, up to 24 hours because having to contact the data center and different things. So it became the answer for us. And with very little changes to our code, we were able to run a managed instance.
Great. And now come back to your story on, now that you are on Azure SQL Managed Instance, I know you run a lot of your workloads on them. How Managed Instance really helped Heckscher and your technology division?
So with Managed Instance, one of the things for in our environment, we had 1,200 databases as part of our environment on-prem. And with having everything trying to go to a single SQL Server, as I talked about before, we were having some contention. With Managed Instance, we were able to break that out and spread that load across multiple instances. And we were able to make our processes go significantly faster. We could create clients in minutes, whereas it used to take us 4 to 8 hours to create a new client. We could migrate our data significantly faster, where it wouldn't work before. We'd have to use specialized tools, get DBAs involved. Now it would just run. It also gave us the ability to look into other technologies within Azure to really go, hey, we can really start modernizing our application and improving the speed of our application and getting all that functionality that you were talking about with the security of our data. We no longer had to really worry as much about it. It was already handled with patching and maintaining everything. And when we heard about NextGen, this was a huge thing for us. With 1,200 databases, we had a lot of instances. When we heard our first option with, when we heard about NextGen was 500 databases, this is awesome. We could move and consolidate, we could make things, we could still have that spread out the data, but this was the first thing that really jumped on us. And Microsoft came to us and said, hey, because of how many instances you have, we want to talk to you about doing this NextGen. So we were part of the early adopters of the NextGen option, and we went down the path of let's get on this and get on it right away. We were one of the first, if not the first, to have more than 100 databases on a managed instance. And that was our first thing that we really liked about the 500 databases. But then when we kept working with Microsoft and working and learning more about what was coming in NextGen, having the sliders with being able to increase memory, increase the IOPS, these features were such a huge benefit for us. We've just actually started playing more and more with these here just recently. We were running into problems with our plan cache being cleared from our instances as we continued to grow. Now we were able to just slide a slider, and within a few minutes, things just, we no longer have problems. It's really been exciting, and because of these changes and because of what Managed Instance has given us, we've gone to the point of everything that we're doing now, all of our stuff that's still on-prem, that's in other technologies, we're moving all of that to Managed Instance so that we have one centralized platform to be able to use, and that's what we're growing from there.
Awesome. This is such a great story, Troy. Great story, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have heard, right? It really feels fulfilling and when something that you worked upon and customers take advantage of it. Like how Troy is explaining that he just moved a slider and their plan cache got really better and their performance got better. That's what we are really looking for. And thank you so much for all the customers who are giving us this continuous feedback to make us innovate even more. Thank you. So now that Azure SQL Managed Instance, this is how Azure SQL Managed Instance works, you need to have a plan to migrate to Azure SQL Managed Instance. We have developed even better ways to do it. To explain more, let me call upon Anitha.
Thank you, Aditya. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm glad to be here to talk about migrations to Azure Managed Instance. May I see a raise of hands? How many of you are using SQL in Azure? Awesome. And how many of you have SQL on-premises or elsewhere? That's great. And are you looking into migrating to Azure? That's great. Great to hear. So we are making migrations much simpler, so I have some awesome news to share today. So to start with, Azure Managed Instance is highly compatible with SQL Server Engine. And what it means for you is for your SQL Server instances running on-premises or elsewhere, you can easily migrate them to Azure Managed Instance with little to no code changes. And once you migrate, you can get the past benefits and the cost savings. And now with NextGen GP, you have the flexibility to pick the SKU of your choice for the better scale and performance that meets your workload requirements. But historically, SQL migrations have been pretty complicated. Would you agree? So many tools out there, one for assessments, one for migration, and many methods of migration, and it's hard to figure out which one to use. And so we are simplifying this migration experience by bringing this to Azure Arc. Before we talk about migrations, let's talk about Arc for just a bit. How many of you are familiar with Azure Arc for SQL? Awesome. So Azure Arc brings Azure capabilities to SQL Server instances running anywhere, be that in your data centers, in different clouds, or in edge locations like retail stores. And so by doing that, we give you a unified single pane of glass for viewing all your data estate, and then we bring Azure innovations to your SQL Server instances running anywhere, things like automatic updates, best practice assessments, monitoring, unified policy management, advanced security, and so on. And now we are bringing seamless migration experience to Azure Managed Instance in Azure Arc. I'm really proud to say that we have a global reach of more than 1 million SQL Server instances that are powered by Arc today. And building on this global reach, we are bringing migration experiences at your fingertips, which means that if you have a SQL Server instance enabled by Azure Arc, you can get started with migrations right away. Now today, I'm really glad to announce that the SQL Server migration experience in Azure Arc is generally available. We are providing you no downtime migration experience, seamlessly migrating from Arc-enabled SQL Server instances to any SKU of Azure SQL Managed Instance. This is done through real-time replication powered by Managed Instance Link. This is a seamless end-to-end experience, start to finish, assessments to full cutover in one go without having to use many tools. And this is assisted by Copilot, so you can get to learn migration journey and understand the steps in a guided manner. And so we are really making it easy for you to migrate and modernize your data estate at scale with low friction and improved efficiency. Now let's take a look at how Azure Migration Experience works. This is enabled in the portal from start to finish. So first we start with assessments. You get continuous assessments automatically enabled. So if your SQL Server instances are enabled for Arc, you automatically have these assessments happening regularly. You get the readiness and performance dashboards. And we give you SKU recommendations, so you don't have to do the guesswork of which SKUs best fit your requirements. Next, when you're ready to migrate, based on the SKU recommendations that we gave, you can provision managed instance inline, and then you can also change the configuration and figure out the cost estimates inline as well. So as you're working through this, you can figure out the right configuration for you and set up the managed instance. Now that the target server is set up, you're ready to migrate the data, and this is no downtime migrations. Here we give you real-time replication through managed instance link. In this case, we set up a distributed availability group, so your source remains untouched, or you can, if you have production workloads, you don't have to worry about any downtime or impact to them. The destination or the target is set as a read-only replica, and that remains in read-only state until you're ready for your cutoff. And to do a cutover, you need to make sure that all your apps and clients are connecting to the target server, and we're giving you tools to do that as well. So with client connection summary, you can look at all the inbound client app connections, and you can ensure that all your clients are now targeted to the target server. And once your app migration is ready, you can do the cutover with just a click. So start to finish, one experience. Please come to Azure as soon as you can. We'd like to see more of your servers in Azure. And if you want to automate this at scale, we are giving you APIs and scripts as well. Now let's take a look at how we can migrate a 2016 SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc to Azure Managed Instance NextGen GP with Arc capabilities for migration. So here, let me see if I have this working. Maybe it's, yeah. So here we have 2016 server enabled by Arc. And because it's enabled by Arc, this is registered into Azure automatically. So you can see that it's showing up as a SQL Server instance in Azure portal. And we've built this new database migration experience. And we can look at the Azure Copilot guided experience here to learn about the migration journey. And you also see guided steps here. So first, we start with assessments. Then when you're migrating, you can pick a target, migrate the data, and then finally monitor the cutover. Now let's take a look at assessments. Here with Pass as strategy, it is recommending Azure SQL MI. And in MI, it's recommending NextGen general purpose. And it's also giving specific recommendations, like it thinks that 4 cores and 32 GB is good for the source server. And it's telling us that the database is ready to migrate, but there are a couple of warnings. We can take a look. In this case, I'm going to ignore them. And now we're ready to migrate. So here we select our target. We can pick an existing managed instance or create a new one. Let's create a new one in this case. And we can pick managed instance free offer. You can just get started without paying a lot of money to start with. You can look at the configuration. We right size it based on assessments recommendation. You can also change it, look at the costs as they change, and use a hybrid benefit if you have it. You can review this configuration. We're going to create. Now that the target server is created, let's migrate the data. We're going to do this with managed instance link. This is done through distributed availability groups, as I mentioned. So we're going to create this distributed availability group now, just a few clicks. We're going to select the source and the target. And we are selecting the database here. And then we are setting up the link. And that's it. The data migration is just one click enabled. And now you can monitor the migration status as a final step. We see that the database is ready for cutover. But before we do that, let's also verify the data is migrated, and then we'll do the cutover if client connections are good. So here on the source server, in SSMS, we can see the number of records on the source server. And let's run a query. It took 6 seconds. And on the destination or the target, let's see if the database that we migrated showed up. And then let's see if the number of records match. The records match, so the data has made it through fully, and we're running a query, and that runs in 2 seconds. NextGen GP scale and performance improvements are working. So now we can monitor the client connections. So right here in the Arc portal, you can see the SQL Server connections. These are all inbound connections to your target server, and you can adjust them to the server, and so you can adjust them and target them to target server. And once that traffic is adjusted, you can do complete cutover, and that's it. With one click, you have done the cutover. And if you have your data estate enabled for Azure Arc, from Arc portal also we can see the assessments at scale across all your data estate. So we are really making it seamless for you to do your migrations end to end with built-in Azure Arc migration experience. Please do give it a try. Thank you so much. Thank you, Aditya.
Thanks, Anitha. So that's such a great story, right? Near zero downtime to migrate from SQL Server on-prem to Azure. Now, who doesn't like free stuff, man? So, so free SQL Managed Instance is there. Please go try. Please try to validate whatever we said. Connect with me on LinkedIn and say, dude, you said what you said is right, or dude, you really need to check your script. So any of that sort. I hope I am right, and please give it a try and give us the feedback. That would be great. Now, SQL is growing with you, and as AI is growing in this era, we want to make sure that we really bring you with us, and that's why we are introducing SQL AI Database Developer Associate Certification. So this is something that we are really excited about. We curated this only to make sure that all of the SQL folks, all of the SQL lovers also kind of get into AI, and we all go take this journey together. So please take make use of this certification, and yeah, I really want all of us to pass. I will try to take it and pass whenever it is available. Okay. The next good thing, really great thing that we announced recently is SQLCon. So here you have a couple of sessions on SQL. You would see more than 50 sessions in SQLCon in Atlanta next year. So it is with FabCon. You would have SQLCon too. We will be more than excited to have you folks there and have more discussions on SQL, more in-depth sessions on SQL. Please take time to register and come there. And finally, there are breakout sessions that happened yesterday, and there are from some labs that are there in Ignite. Please try to follow that. I also want to, this is for the photographs. I also want to leave up this resources slide. We have so many samples on AI. We have so much documentation on hyperscale and managed instances and all of that sort. Please take a look at it and give us the feedback. Now, more than anything, I want to give you a clap around. Thanks for being great audience. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you.